So welcome one and all to Impolite Company on the GCPR.live network. It's the show where we do what we've always been told not to do, talk about religion and politics. I'm your host, Matthew Best. Together, we walk through honest dialogue, we explore messy truths and difficult topics, and try to make sense and see the humanity and perspectives different from our own. If you have a thought or a question or something you want to comment on, you can email me at contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can subscribe to past and future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And just search for Impolite Company, look for the logo. And if you want to dig deeper into the themes that we explore here, you can visit my blog at pastormatthewbest.com. And always appreciate any type of support you can provide at buymeacoffee.com/impolite company. About halfway through, I'll offer a little bit of some of the things that are special projects, but right now, let's get into today's conversation. I am pleased to welcome a colleague, the Reverend Tyler Graham, who was ordained in July 2020 and serves as the pastor of Living Waters Lutheran Parish, which is a two-point parish in southern Somerset County in Pennsylvania, consisting of Greenville Evangelical Lutheran Church in Myersdale and St. John's Lutheran Church in Salisbury. He also serves as the Dean of Laurel Highlands Conference of the Allegheny Synod and as the Assistant to the Bishop for Transition of the Allegheny Synod. In addition to his service to the church and the Synod, Reverend Graham also serves as the chaplain with the Maryland State Police, chair of the Salisbury Family Center Advisory Board, and is an active member of the Myersdale Area Ministers Association and is a subscribed member of the Society of the Holy Trinity. And he enjoys spending time with family, riding motorcycle and kayaking, and his other interests include spirituality, spiritual direction, and rural ministry. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Matt. I greatly appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And boy, there's a lot going on. I know that feeling, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to come here and to talk on here. So we were when we were talking before the show, we were talking about the topics that we were going to really hit on, and one of the things that really struck out, you had talked a little bit about the importance of silence.
Mm.
And so that's where I want to start is we live in a noisy culture and society, right? This even this thing here constantly blowing up, notifications, even if you turn them off, you still get notifications, you get dings, you get this, that, and the other thing. Noise, 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 noise. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about when you talk about the idea of silence, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so obviously one component of that is the noise, right? To minimize or even turn off the noise. But as you said, even when we try to turn them off, there's always some noise around. And so this notion of silence that I often think of is just how do we silence ourselves?
Mm,
Our minds, our hearts, and not necessarily in a bad way, but how do we allow ourselves to sit in a humble position in front of God and try to minimize those distractions, but truly be ourselves in that space? Um, and so, in that sense, I think not only because we live in a culture that's nonstop and full of noise, but as Christians, I think we miss some of those opportunities when we don't take that time for ourselves of realizing God's presence, but I mean, even more his call to us and his love for us.
yeah.
Those all get blurted out, or I'll say overwhelmed by the noise of the world.
And
Very
that's
easily.
yeah, right. And that's kind of the idea of discipleship is about listening, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's one way to translate what disciple means is to listen. It's reminding me, I grew up Roman Catholic, and one of the things that I have tried to that I've tried to keep with me in becoming Lutheran, in that is the sense of sacred silence.
Mm.
There are times in a Catholic Mass where there's just silence. Nothing is going on. And what I've seen is a struggle, especially in Protestantism and Lutheran circles, a lot of times, not always, but is a struggle with that silence in the midst of worship. It feels like people just feel like they got to fill that void with something, because otherwise, oh my gosh, there's silence. Something must be wrong, is the kind of the go-to. And so I'm wondering about, what you're talking about is hearing God, and of course that hopefully happens for folks in worship. But I'm wondering about other ways that folks might be able to have that sense of silence.
Yeah, so for me, and I do want to touch on the topic about worship that you bring up
Yeah,
because um, Father Boniface Hicks, who's a Benedictine at St. Vincent in Latrobe, he wrote a book not too long ago. It's called this Power of Silence in the Mass, and it talks about those spaces
yeah,
in liturgy where there are silence or where we struggle for the silence.
yeah,
And so, having read that book in the parish here, I'm very much mindful as a leader in worship about those spaces and those pauses. And sometimes I'll even call people, not personally out, but I'll, make it a point to say, did you notice the extra silence at the
yeah,
confession today? And
right,
some people say, yeah. And I said, what do you hear in that? And for me, you can hear the sighs, you can hear the rustling around. People are nervous. Um, but outside of Mass, I think there's plenty of opportunity for silence. Um, for one, am one that I like to get up early
yeah,
and take those first bits of time before there's much going on, especially before I turn on the TV to catch the news, which is really the weather today.
yeah,
Um, but in those early morning hours of just being able to focus the most, I would say, on what am I intentionally doing. And part of that is just listening. Now, of course, we have dogs and,
yeah,
people getting ready for work and that, but um, just being able to spend those times, and that's usually where I do my devotion time, read some scripture, pray, and then just sit, and whatever noise is around is okay, but to just be in it,
yeah,
without adding myself to it, my thoughts, my concerns, um, and just allowing that to be a holy space, I'll say. The
yeah,
other parts that I often come across is in the vehicle when I'm driving. There's a lot of time that I just turn off the radio.
yep,
Uh, Not because I'm listening to anything bad or there's news feed or anything, but I think there's just opportunities that we choose to just fill the air with, really, we're not even listening to it usually, rather than allowing ourselves to just be there in a different way.
yeah. I have found myself doing that exact same thing. It's a 30-minute drive from the church to where I live, and I have found myself more and more just riding in silence.
Hmm.
And just that's some time for prayer. It's a time to not think. It's this time to just be, and then also to notice, what are the triggers? How do I react to different things that are going on around me, and to really kind of pay attention as well, but also to try and notice, where am I seeing God, um, or where am I hearing God, or what's going on, or why am I not seeing God in different things. Um,
Yeah,
so
and
yeah, go ahead.
uh, I was just thinking, I think that's part of our problem with this idea of silence
Yeah.
and why we don't engage it more, is because it provides an opening that gets
Mm,
very uncomfortable
yes.
because it means that we have to wrestle with ourselves.
Yeah.
And in that, even if nobody is around, we're very vulnerable at that point. Um, because we all think of things, we all have said, done things that we're not pleased about or happy about. And then, wow, when you confront yourself with them, that's a whole different perspective. And so in those moments, that's really what's happening is you're engaging your inner self and there's a wrestling going on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is a scary, that's kind of, I think, part of the reason why some folks struggle with Holy Week, actually. I know people's schedules are full and everything, and I also know that there's sometimes a hesitancy for folks to go to different Holy Week services because they're different.
Mhm.
Um, there are intentional opportunities of silence, and it's uncomfortable. I mean, we're dealing with death, we're dealing with cruelty, we're dealing with sin, we're dealing with and it's right there. There's no avoiding it. There's no way to spin it. There it is. And sitting in that, just kind of like what you're saying too, is also seeing our capacity for those things. It's not out there. It's not somebody else. We have the capacity as well. And I think you're absolutely right. The idea of silence allows us to hear ourselves, and we don't like that. Uh, right?
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about, I think, the importance of going from our own personal experience to more of a larger either community or cultural or society level.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we have, in one sense, I think American culture has always been noisy in some way, shape, or form. It's just the different ways of that happening. Um, and especially now, we have so much technology and technological noise, and so much of it is at our fingertips and readily available, um, that it almost feels like this constant hum or maybe yelling, I don't know, that prevents us from not only being in the moment to even think about silence, but we're like constantly chasing after something. And I'm wondering, your thoughts about the idea of silence almost kind of forces a pause in that chasing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know, not just as clergy or Christians or but as people that our hearts are yearning for something. And that's really the desire that causes us to chase after everything, right?
Right.
Um, and then obviously there are different aspects, circumstances we encounter that we chase after other things because we're trying to fill a void, we're trying to run away from something, we're trying to avoid a hurt, all those things. But to pause, in a sense, to take an intentional stop. Um, in some ways, our society is not programmed that way anymore.
Right.
We live in a culture that's 24/7, 365, and this whole notion that if you're not on the go or you're not doing something, um, then you're not productive, you're, not useful, I guess you could say even.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a scary thing for a lot of people today, because, as you said, we have all the news at our fingertips. I mean, but there's this, what do our daughters say? FOMO, fear of
Yeah.
missing out.
Right.
Um, there's that. You have the culture just in the background saying, well, you have to be doing, you got to hear this. Oh, what about this one? Um, and just we are just wearing ourselves out, I
Mm.
think, by not allowing ourselves that true rest. We think about Sabbath even,
Yeah.
um, and what does it mean in that? But but the culture as a whole functions that way.
Yeah.
And then as we have all this technology, as you mentioned, our anxiety levels are up. Um, we certainly have a mental health crisis, not just in general, but especially with our younger generations today.
Yeah.
Um, and we keep struggling with how do we fix it. And unfortunately, often we try to fix it by prescriptions and filling our life with other things. And I think part of it is really just slowing down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's going to fix it all because I
Right.
know better than that.
Right.
But our brains aren't wired for 24/7.
Right.
Our bodies are not created for 24/7.
Right.
Um, and there's something renewing, there's something resurrecting since we're in Easter
Yeah.
um, about this when we take an intentional step back and allow ourselves to just be and quiet even.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that because as the church, we have this um, we have a unique offering, right? Or we're supposed to.
Very countercultural.
Right. Again, we have it, or we're supposed to be. I don't know how well the church does with that. Um, uh, but I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about what how the church has an opportunity um, to offer those pauses, those opportunities for silence in a way that, as we've both said, our culture is not used to that, and we have a physical reaction to we have to fill that silence with something, right? And so I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about how the church has an opportunity not only to provide spaces for that, but to walk with people and help them to not only see that physical reaction, but guide them into to taking those opportunities, to knowing that, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable when you do it. It's building a habit. It's those type of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, I, I was thinking a little bit about coming from the Lutheran tradition, where, and not my favorite terminology, traditional versus contemporary
Sure.
worship, and all those things that come into play where, we often hear our parishioners comparing us to the church down the road that,
Right.
has screens and, I
Right.
mean, just, and from the Lutheran tradition, one of the things that drew me in was the liturgy
Hmm.
and just being able to, for a moment, for an hour, maybe because we're human, to be disconnected from the world in a
Yeah.
way. Um, and so for me, and what I see with a number of parishioners is that that becomes a rhythm for them. Not to say they don't engage or they
Sure.
focus for a full hour because we can't.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that is one place that the church has an offering for the world of stepping away, but also refocusing in a different way that can honestly be a bit more healthy than some of the ways we do. Um, but then also, I think it comes about with modeling.
Hmm.
Um, and I know you mentioned about even as clergy, sometimes we struggle with this notion of time away and silence and
Yeah.
not being on the go. And as you were talking about my bio, I was like, man, I'm involved in a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, but then, and I hear that from parishioners too, but I think it's about how do you manage your time,
Sure.
and I'm intentional about blocking those times
Yeah.
where I know I have a council meeting this evening or whatever. So I'm going to make sure the afternoon I get an hour or so downtime. Um, or if I don't, because, things come up, then the next morning, I'm not in the office at 8 a.m.
Right.
I'm taking a little extra time. And again, it's about building those rhythms, habits, as you mentioned. And unfortunately, there again, the culture's against us
Hmm.
um, because we like things now.
Yes.
We don't want to wait,
Yep.
and we know that it takes 30 days to build a habit.
Right.
Um, but that's an intentionality too, and I
Right.
think people go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to do it for 3 days, and I'm going to be set. And then day four happens, and they missed their prayer time, they missed their
Yep.
devotion time, they left the radio on the way to work, and then they feel bad, they beat themselves up about it.
Right.
And
Right.
the idea isn't to do that. The idea is that you recognize it first and then you start over.
Yeah.
Um, this notion that we always have that opportunity to begin again. Um, and just because you mess up, and I mean, man, I've been doing, silent prayer and that for a while, and there are still some days that come up and you're just like, I just don't have it in me.
Yep.
Or you were up late and you just tired and you just don't even think about it because you have all the other stuff to do. But where grace abounds, as does forgiveness. So
Yep.
God's just happy that we sit a little bit of
Right.
time with him. He's not so much that you can't move, you can't do anything.
Right.
But then I think it's that modeling sense. So I make it a habit that when I do visits, I don't, I might have my phone on me, but it's not turned on, so the volume or
Right.
nothing. That is intentional time with whoever I'm visiting. Um, and then, when we're out at restaurants, and I know you see it, everybody sees it, everybody at a table around you is um, on their phones, not even communicating with one another. And we make it a point that we don't usually pick up our phones or respond to things at the table. That's just a way of doing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it takes time.
Right.
Um, and there's
Well,
certainly there's those times when we're out and I think, oh, I know we're getting all the looks. But it's okay for us. That's what we need. And
yeah.
yeah.
I think this also speaks to the notion of because what I hear is also a little bit of the struggle that you're talking about. What I have found helpful is especially starting something new. If I have someone else who's also doing this
Mm,
with me, there is something, uh, facing something alone ends up being a huge hurdle. And we're more likely to, stop after a couple of days or whatever the case may be. But if we do this together, if we do something together or in a group or whatever the case may be, then the likelihood is you're more likely to stick because now you have accountability.
hmm
My son was telling me that, and this was going into Lent. They were going to do this 3-day fast as part of a practice with us, and so he was asking me about what is this like, and they wanted to do this as a spiritual practice. Um, and I was asking them questions like, how many people are doing this? Are you doing this with somebody else, with some other folks? Oh yeah, yeah. We had thought about this, that, and the other thing. And so I just asked them questions about how can they be intentional about doing it together, because it's more likely to be able to not only just be able to do it, but to be in community together is really important to create those habits, to create this sense of connection with folks, right? Silence isn't solitary, or it
Right.
doesn't have to be solitary. Silence can also be communal in that aspect, and that's really, I think I probably learned that most from running,
Mm,
especially early. I've been a runner for a long time, done many distance races, and I've done both running by myself, running with other folks. And of course, then there's the race day, which, you know, you're with however many of your closest friends all of a sudden. The beauty of that is you're all doing this thing together. And if you're not one of the professional runners, then you know you're not going to win. So so it's not about that. It's just right. And then people helping each other along in that. And I think there's that's similar to what you're talking about as well. Just in the spiritual practice of silence can be, it doesn't have to be alone in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so my entryway into this notion of silence was really through spiritual direction,
Yeah.
uh, and just being there with someone, but taking that time in a structured way where there wasn't maybe anything being said. And it forced me. I will admit the first few times of spiritual direction, I just wanted to talk the entire time,
Yeah.
and and it took me time to learn that those spaces while you're with someone wasn't hurting me, but it was actually allowing the spirit to move,
Yeah.
um, and to do something. Um, and then but it took time, and yeah, I struggled with that. There's still sometimes when I go to spiritual direction and there's a little bit of silence because maybe the director's thinking or something, and in my mind I'm like, okay, what did I just say, and
Yeah.
did I say something like totally whacked or what?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
So you
absolutely.
start to worry, and then yeah, it's not usually, but that's our makeup.
Right. Right. Well, before we continue, this is about halfway through, I want to take a brief moment of pause to mention a few things that are close to my heart, places where faith meets action, and ask for people's support. So, first is Christ Lutheran Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the church that I privileged to serve as the pastor, as well as the executive director of the health ministries here at the church. It's far more than a congregation. Our we have a little neat little formula, which is one church plus three clinics equals new futures. So we have three free health clinics that serve about 10,000. We have about 10,000 visits a year, and have a huge impact on the community. And if you want, if people are listening and they're in the area, they can come for a tour. You can schedule that right on the website, which is christharrisburg.org. But we're always looking for financial support. This is a poor congregation, and 90% of our funding comes from outside sources. So you can. I would love to have a conversation with folks. And again, people can come out. They can check out the clinics and see what's going on. ChristHarrisburg.org. Second is Memorial Blanket Project. Every year, people make blankets from all over the place. We've gotten blankets as far as Australia and Germany, in fact, and they send them to us. They're making blankets for strangers who are experiencing homelessness, who are unhoused, and we turn those into a massive art installation that draws attention to homelessness. And then we give away all the blankets at the end of the night. It is done on December 21st, the longest night, which is Homeless Remembrance Night, and it moves around. We've done this at the West Lawn of the U.S. Capitol, on the steps of the Pennsylvania Capitol. We've been out in Denver, Colorado. This year we're going to be up in New York City. You can learn more at memorialblanket.org, and if you are a quilter or sewer, then please be making blankets and quilts. And finally, if you're wrestling with the tough, heartbreaking issue of gun violence, you can check out American Roulette. It's a novel that sparks honest conversation, doesn't offer any answers. It really is a focus on the humanity in the midst of just horrible things. So you can check out. It's also a great thriller as well. All proceeds go to organizations that address gun violence, and you can get a free audio version of that at AmericanRouletteBook.com. In 2027, there's actually going to be a graphic novel of this book. There are a total of 10 contributors to this, and none of us make a dime off of it. It's about trying to open up conversation and helping people to see things a little bit differently. So, all right, now that I put that in, so let's get back to the show. Tyler, I want to switch topics now. I think we have
Okay.
run silence into the ground. No, we can never have enough of that. But I want to talk a little bit about this. Is really a neat opportunity. You're in a rural setting, and
Yep.
I'm in an urban setting. And so I want to, you had brought up this topic. And so I think this is beautiful. This is a great opportunity to talk about rural and urban ministry. And I think oftentimes when people hear those, they think of how different they are. And there are certainly differences, no doubt about it. But I think there's a lot more similarities between rural and urban ministry than people like to imagine. And I know a lot of folks are like, well, because of the way the landscape is and how spread out versus how compact and all. Yeah, there's those differences. But for me, you're dealing with people, and there are significant challenges in both of these settings that I think are more similar than not. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are with that.
Yeah. Which is, I was, as you were talking about the ministries of the church there where you serve and that, I was thinking, what a great segue from silence,
Yeah,
right, into ministry. Because the notion I think people have of silence is that we do it to withdraw from the world. And that's not it. It's really to regather
right.
ourselves, as a church would call, recollect ourselves, so that we can then go back out and with a clear mindset or a different mindset truly engage in ministry. And yeah, I serve in two rural small congregations. On an average Sunday, I probably see between the two around 65 people.
Hmm.
I would say on average, and that's two worship services. That's not one.
Hmm.
Um, the congregations, for the most part, we do stuff throughout the week, but it is not an urban church in that there's not something going on at the church every day
Sure,
or every
sure.
evening. Um, and I think people struggle with that notion of, well, if the church isn't doing something all the time, is the church doing ministry?
Right,
And and I think it's our notions of what is ministry
right.
too. Um, and going through seminary, we often heard ministry is contextual and thinking about what are the needs in that area. But as you mentioned, it's about people, it's about relationship. And so, no matter the size of the church, no matter what the lay of the land of the community, there's people there, most
Yeah,
likely.
yep.
Yeah, you might have to drive a 20 minutes to get to somebody's house, or a half hour to get to the hospital. But you're sharing that life together, which
Right.
is which can be just as devastating for people as it can be in the city. And it can just be as joyful as somebody in the city as well. Um, so I did my internship at Christ Elizabethtown,
Oh yeah.
and and so I was in that very different setting,
Right.
and that's a very active congregation. I mean, that
Hmm.
is one where pretty much every day there's something going on.
Yep.
Um, and I will say, going there from the Allegheny Synod was a bit of a shock. I had to adapt to traffic and,
Sure.
being able to, in many ways, uh, touch the neighbor's house by taking two steps. Whereas
Yep.
where I'm at, I mean, yeah, we have houses nearby, but there's no touching them without
Right.
walking a little distance.
Right.
Um, and then coming back, this this idea of, yeah, this is the church, and I had to readapt to rural ministry, in a sense of finding the ministries here. So one of the big ministries we do is the backpack program with the local
Hmm.
school.
Sure.
Um, And here in Salisbury Elk Lick School District, it's one of the smallest in the state. Um, I think our daughter's graduating class was like one of them had 16 and one had 18,
Wow.
I think, in the class.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, and the backpack program, though, now I came in the middle of the pandemic, so
Hmm.
things kind of were off anyway.
Sure.
But that need for food, that need for hygiene products, that need for cleaning products, just the basic necessities is ever prevalent here, just as much as it is in the inner cities.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would say the difference, though, is that the people here are probably more reluctant to engage in some of those resources.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you live in an area that there's a pride
Sure.
in being homegrown kind of a sense. Um, and I think that hinders some people from actually receiving the resources that we're more than willing to share. Um, and when you're in a rural area, people know each other.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and so the sense of community is totally different. And I think that's another hindrance is that people are known. And so I don't want to show up there because I know those people, you know. Um, and that's not at all about it. It's about we know you need something, and we're more than willing, if we can, to provide and help you out. Um, I think about this area especially. It's been a historical coal logging area, um, and those industries are gone. And I mean, we're about 45 minutes from Johnstown, which would have been the steel mills and everything, and
Hmm.
that's all gone.
Right.
Um, and I mean, Somerset County is probably one of the more poverty-ridden areas, especially the southern part where I serve,
Hmm.
uh, because we're a bit further from all those resources that are a little more easy to get to.
Yeah.
Uh, and so this notion though of ministry is, yeah, we're still taking care of one another. We just do it in a very different way.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out, yeah, we don't have an endless supply of resources either.
Yeah.
Um, Not that any of us really do.
No, that's for
I
sure.
think that's another part of it is just where are your resources and what do they look like and how do you use them as the best stewards you can be, to serve the greatest amount for the greater good.
Yeah. I was talking with you. What you're telling me is just reminding me of this often happens. I'll have a conversation with someone and I'll mention I do this on purpose. At least in this synod, in Lower Susquehanna Synod, I will say, I'm the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Allison Hill because Allison Hill has a reputation. It's the poorest section of Harrisburg. That's the zip code that is one of the poorest zip codes in Pennsylvania. It's one of the most diverse as well. So there's this kind of reputation of, well, there's assumptions that are made. Oh, it's a dangerous area or something like that. People will say this of, well, you be safe when you go there. And I'm like, well, I've been going there for about 3 years now. I'm okay. Um, but I do this on purpose to mention Allison Hill because it opens the door for conversation, to address some of those stereotypes and some of the misperceptions, and that actually it's amazing the kind of conversations that happen, because typically people will the things that people will talk about is, well, that there's violence there's crime, there's this, that, and the other thing, and I'm like, the difference between Allison Hill and where you live is that it's just out in the open here.
Hmm.
The same stuff happens in your neighborhood too. It just gets hidden. Like, show me a neighborhood that there isn't domestic violence. It happens, right? Show me somewhere that there isn't actually a drug issue. It happens. It just gets hidden oftentimes. These are human things. And so I think those are helpful for folks to kind of to actually think about why they think about things, and why they make assumptions about, in my case, in urban settings. And I imagine it would be the same thing in a rural setting of, well, there's this, that, and the other thing, whatever kind of assumptions people have. Oh, I'm sure you've probably heard, like rural settings probably have stereotypes about, oh, people aren't as educated or whatever the case may be. Um, and not thinking about, like, there's homelessness that happens in rural settings. There's all these other challenges that happen just like anywhere else. And it's this idea of, oh, these problems are somewhere else, is this kind of way of I don't know, maybe I don't want to quite say scapegoating, but of washing ourselves clean of, well, these are not my problems. I think we really have opportunities when we're out of our context to help people to see, kind of like what you were just talking about. Yeah, rural communities have this sense of community that is really strong.
Yes.
And knowing what's going on. And yeah, there's a negative side to that too, but an incredible strength to that as well. Yeah. So anyway,
But
um,
that problem of hiddenness that you
yeah,
mentioned, it is prevalent here. And what stood out to me was shortly after we started being able to do things in the pandemic again, the schools obviously weren't gathering like they
right,
had been. And so we were able to deliver food to homes. And here the we cover not just the weekends, but when school's in session, we cover breaks. So we cover the entire Christmas break and Easter break, those big
okay,
ones.
yeah,
And so I can remember that first Christmas year, people taking boxes and coming back and just saying, I didn't realize that family lived there,
mm,
or the condition of the house.
yeah,
And these are people who had lived here their entire life.
yeah,
Uh, and it's that notion of seeing things from a different perspective. I mean, they probably traveled some of those roads many times, but
right,
now they had an intentional look at something for a different reason. Um, and the other part of this area is, having been a mining logging community, there's the notion that, well, they're not very friendly, right?
right,
And the but that contrasts with this notion of strong community.
sure,
If you're wary of the outsiders, I guess you could say, is the probably the cliche most people think of.
right,
Um, and that, I think, really goes back to these areas being used for what they had,
yeah,
um, and not really valued for the people per se.
yeah,
Um, these areas are very much a resource, or have been historically. Um, and yeah, the people were a resource, but they were just a resource to get the resources that people wanted more so. Um, and so you have that history where companies would come in, do what they wanted, not necessarily leave areas in the best of conditions, um, and then leave.
yeah,
And basically, that was it. And so you have this, in the rural area here, forgottenness,
yeah,
that, we're left out to dry. And so there is that weariness. Um, I know it took me a little while to probably break in to relationship with people here, just because I was not from here. Um, but one of the things I was intentional about was making sure they knew I was here for them.
hmm,
Um, so making sure visits happened, invitations to just pop around at the parsonage and say hi. And when the things were going on at the church, I'd be present. And then, when the families needed you, you show up. And
right,
having been here 6 years now, I can say that I think we're probably part of the community.
Yeah, sure.
It, I don't want to say it helps being one of the very few pastors who live in the community,
Sure.
uh, or one of the few pastors even here. But so a lot of non-parishioners know me and
Right.
that too, but it is a whole different sense of being
Yeah.
in community here.
Yeah. I appreciate that because I know when I walk down the street here at the church, maybe going to get some food or something like that, whether I have my collar on or not. It happens a lot. Reverend, Reverend, Pastor, Pastor. I don't know who these people are, but they know who I am, and that's far more important.
Mhm.
They know that I'm associated with this church. They know I'm associated with the clinics, and there's this sense of trust. We often talk about the idea of trust is our currency.
Mm.
It is essential. Without trust, everything collapses. And that's not just our community of this church. I think that's true of a culture and a civilization as well. That this is the foundation. This is the currency, the foundation for any type of community or culture has to be trust, which I think, you talk about, we talk about some of the larger challenges that we face as a society. For me, I go down to we have a whole lot of folks who don't trust each other. Part of that is we've got folks who aren't necessarily, they may be speaking English and using the same words, but they don't have the same definitions of words. Like you can see this in a larger sense of like the word freedom or something like that, of what how it's being used and what it means for different groups of folks. And so there's all these kind of divides that happen that are diminishing trust rather than trying to build trust and see how connected we are, not in spite of differences, but because of larger things that draw us together, and recognizing that differences are going to happen. And it's, I talk about it here. We have a very diverse congregation, and I talk about it as is this beauty of I get to see a wider swath of the image of God
Mm.
in this, right? And so it's not to focus on the differences, but it's to be able to say, oh, these are all part of something larger in that. And so there's that sense of trust. I think that's oftentimes one of the misperceptions that happens in urban and rural, has to do, and you touched on this with the idea of outsiders coming in. I really appreciate what you're talking about with businesses coming in, almost kind of colonizing an area, right? Like just
Yeah.
taking it, stripping it, and then dumping it. That's what colonization was or is or whatever. Yeah, there's so much to that, and yeah, of course, people are going to have trust issues when that happens. When people aren't seen as inherently valuable or having worth, uh, yeah, there's going to be hesitation. I know that's true here in an urban setting where it's easy for people to be just completely not seen. Loneliness,
Mm.
it's the biggest epidemic in urban settings, right? Which sounds
Yeah.
wildly crazy. To be surrounded by so many people. One of the biggest things that people come into the medical outreach clinic for, not their stated reason, but really what's underneath it all is loneliness, because they know that if they come in, they can sit down, they can talk with a nurse for as long as they need to, and it may be the only healthy conversation they have with another human being all day.
Mm.
Um, this sense of loneliness, and if you have that, then who are you trusting? Who can you
Right.
trust? Um, so yeah, I really appreciate, and I just totally connects with what you're talking about in the rural context. Um, I, almost the difference between the rural and the urban is how much space is in between people. Um,
Yeah.
That's about it. I mean, there's other differences too, but that seems to be the biggest thing in that. Um,
Yeah. And um, Bishop Schock had just said something the other day. I was with him somewhere, and he was quoting Pastor Nathan Pyle, who's the director at Camp Sequanota here in the Synod, and something along the lines of the church moves at the speed of relationship,
oh yeah.
and relationship moves at the speed of trust.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and I was like, that is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nathan has a lot of pearls of wisdom.
yes, he does.
Appreciate when I'm out there talking with him and just learning from him. All right, so we got about 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if let's dive into this. We're just gonna tap the surface
Okay.
of this of because I've been wanting to talk with folks about AI,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that we've talked about silence and noise, we've talked about urban and rural, and now for some reason it just feels right to bring in and we're going to solve all the problems here in 9 minutes time, uh, especially about AI. And there's a lot of good things, there's a lot of really negative things as well, um, but spirituality in AI.
Mm,
I remember, I did an interview with somebody for the Journal of Lutheran Ethics, and they study AI and spirituality and all of this, and they were talking about how there are folks that go to AI for spiritual questions, and how this is becoming more prevalent. And the challenge, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, is AI is designed to give you what you want to hear,
mhm,
as opposed to spiritual direction, which is not necessarily what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
mhm,
And so I'm wondering about your thoughts on the spirituality of AI. Maybe that's kind of
mm.
how's that?
Well, I have to wonder, um, the creators of I don't know that they're creating it with a spirituality notion. Um,
Or at least
I
not a
think
healthy spirituality.
correct. Yeah. And yeah, we do know that AI it's kind of that, what is fed into it is what it
Right.
regurgitates in a way, and that's not always good or healthy either. I think that, right, we have this deep innate yearning for something in us,
Yeah.
and and especially in our 21st century culture of America, where we want things now and we want it to be what we want it to be. Um, we project that, and AI fills that
Mm.
void,
Yeah.
in that it makes it so much easier to connect to a God that you want, right? It's the age old sin of creating God in our image
Yep.
rather than being created in God's image. And I think, um, I mean, I'll be honest, it just scares the daylights out of me, this whole AI stuff. Um, but there's so many parts to it that, one, we don't really get access to. Um, and I say that as the average person doesn't. Um, and two, it's so cutting edge that, I mean, we're trying to catch up to it in a way, I think, which makes it even more difficult to wrap our heads around what is actually happening. Um,
Well, and that just kind of it reminds me of I was having another conversation with someone, and they were talking about this, and they were saying we don't even know what to think about AI because we don't even know
mm,
what the right questions are at
right.
this point, right? I mean, it's this ongoing evolving thing that continues. We just had here at the church, we have a listing on Google for, like search engine stuff and stuff like that. Uh, and so it's like this business account that we had to pay for in order to have it verified so that we have control over it, all this type of stuff. And essentially, because now like AI is producing results when you do searches. And so if you don't do that, you won't show up in the AI search results. And it's like, holy cow, like we're trapped by this thing.
Right.
Uh, yeah, it's yeah. Now we sound like a bunch of old men.
Um,
Back in my day,
yeah, the Luddites of the world, right?
right?
Um, the other part of it, I mean, I really don't keep up with this part of our culture or
Yeah.
our world today. But I know not long ago there was this AI Jesus, right, that was created, and we hear a lot about using AI to proclaim the word,
Hmm.
or churches are going to be using AI for liturgy because we don't have clergy to fill the pulpits and
Yeah, yeah,
all these things. And I mean, we live in a world of fear talk, right?
yeah, right.
The world's going to end and we're all just SOL.
Yep.
And I have to wonder, this whole AI stuff, is it, in terms of the church, is it one of the ways that we're trying to hold on to something
Mm,
and avoid ourselves, but our own mortality?
yeah,
Uh, and I say that in a real sense of, we don't want to think about death.
right.
Um, and if there's something that can preserve it,
Mm,
even if it is fully technological, then by all means, it's the Holy Grail, right?
yeah,
Um, and yet we know that it's not the answer, not just because it's technology and it's not a human interaction or way of being, but it disrupts everything in a in the creation. And I don't say that just in our own created bodies, but in creation, I think about the water usage, the
right,
power usage, um, that these AI centers, data centers, whatever you want to call them, require. And in the church here, we've had some conversations about AI and that, and it's amazing that those other things are things people don't know about, or they don't
right,
hear about them. And we hear about the news, oh, the AI robots, and
right,
all these animations of real people that look real, their voice and everything.
right.
um, but we don't we just focus on those parts that are fed to us in a way. um, and I think we miss out on our own spirituality when we don't allow our hearts to truly be a part of it, um, instead of just looking for the next best thing, easy answer, um, whatever's the most convenient.
Yeah,
And to do some of that hard work of, leave that alone, right? There may, I say that very cautiously, be a time and place for that,
sure.
but um, I think we have to remember whose we are, um, and try to avoid those idols that the world is pushing onto us.
Yeah,
Uh, And in the rural settings, um, I think maybe sometimes that's a little easier. People aren't there. There's just a different pace of life.
sure.
Um, there's already that, we'll say, barrier of adapting in some ways, change,
Hmm.
that
Sure.
awful C word, is, reluctant just within its culture. But I think there's just that notion of, they're not as embraced in it either
Yeah,
as the urban settings, and that trying to link some of the things we've talked about. But I will say, yeah, this whole AI thing and spirituality, like I don't see it coming together at all.
Yeah. Well, at least not in
I,
a healthy way.
right, yeah, that it shouldn't come together is what I should say.
Right.
Although we know that it's already intertwined and
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna close out with this. So that
okay.
it reminds me of seeing there was the first lady came out with a she was standing next to a robot that was being proposed as a possible teacher to replace
Mm,
teachers, and I thought that doesn't make sense unless education is only about the transfer of information.
hmm
Right? Education is about more than just the transfer of information. And I would say the same thing with spirituality is sure a robot, an AI can spit out, just like you said, it's only as good as whatever is put in. It can spit out information about God, but Christianity at its practice, at a more pure practice, is more than just having the right information. It's about hopefully it's integrated throughout our entire being and how we live it out. So, all
Yeah,
right.
Christianity is a very incarnational faith.
Yes.
It
Amen.
is it is the stuff of the dust.
That's
And
right.
just one quick thought there I had about the not only incarnation, but the question from Pilate, what
Yeah.
is truth?
Oh, there you go. Right. There you go. We can put that into one of the AIs and see what it comes
Yeah.
up with.
Oh, I'm sure we'd get a good answer.
All right. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
on the
brother.
show.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and I hope everyone, well, have an enjoyable beginning to the Easter season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes.